test.
Are we good to start? Cool. Awesome. So just a quick brief introduction. My name is Dominic Carbonaro. I am the Director of Business Development at Avalanche, which is the entity that overlooks the Avalanche blockchain, and I focus on consumer and enterprise.
Hey everyone, I'm Billy Huang. I'm the CEO of Insomnia Labs. We're a strategic partner for Avalanche, and together we'll be building one of the domain applications, which will allow us to, and I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but trade these domains as well as, offer DeFi primitives to the domains that you guys know today. So we're very excited. Traditionally, Insomnia Labs has been working with, Web 2 enterprises, so Under Armour, Coca-Cola, L'Oreal, Unilever. And a lot of what we do is on streamlining crypto experiences to make it, very user-friendly. And so, the hope is that we can make this as seamless as possible, where crypto is pretty much abstracted away as much as possible, except for the settlement. So very excited to talk to everyone here today.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm going to briefly just talk about Avalanche and what Avalanche is. So Avalanche is a layer 1 blockchain, and I feel like people have said that a bunch today, and some of you may know what that means, and some of you may not know what that means. So a really just quick way to have a mental model of what these things are. People also refer to them as like the base layer, so it's just really the bottom part in which transactions are confirmed and secure. There's really 3 buckets to put these things into. Every single layer 1 is trying to solve the problem of how do we scale these things to be able to absorb hundreds of millions of people doing billions and billions of transactions. And everyone has a unique approach to that, for the most part. You have ecosystems that believe they can scale everything on one chain. So just you need one chain, we'll be able to do every single transaction. We're going to get transactions per second up as high as we possibly can, and that's it. So you can think of ecosystems like Solana, Sui, I believe Sei is also like this. Then you have ecosystems at the layer 1 that scale via L2s. So that's going to be Ethereum in their ecosystem. So you're looking at layer 2s like Base, Arbitrum. Base is built on the Optimism stack. And then there's the third bucket, which is what Avalanche sits in, Cosmos, and I believe a few others, which is where we scale horizontally. So we have the C chain, which is our main chain. So that's where most of the crypto native activity is. Even some of the RWA and institutional stuff we have done is on that. But we also focus on launching your own L1s using our stack. So we built internally a product called AvaCloud, which is, you can think of like AWS for launching your own blockchain. They do everything from nodes, indexers, whatever you need. So you can really quickly launch your own layer 1 blockchain, and it uses Avalanche consensus, and it ties into the rest of the network. And so that's kind of our approach in the market and how we view ourselves. Avalanche's initial mission statement when I first started here, I was buying the asset and on the chain before I started working here, but the initial mission statement was to tokenize all the world's assets. That was kind of our focus. It was a very heavy institutional RWA and DeFi chain. That was kind of the roots of a lot of the early employees. A lot of them had come from TradFi, and they had seen the need for tokenizing real-world assets. And it's kind of a testament to where we're at now, where you have Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, coming out and saying he wants to see bonds be tokenized. Like, that just should happen. So if you would have told me that in 2022, I would have probably called you crazy. What we've seen so far, and kind of how the market's viewed crypto, both internally and externally, we put a heavy focus on RWAs, DeFi, institutional finance. That was not very popular. And it wasn't very popular for a few reasons. We've had some people come up today and speak about regulation and the previous administration. But what it really did was it blocked a lot of builders. So I have the advantage of working with a lot of really, really smart people who are unbelievably talented engineers. And a lot of them came into crypto in 2018, 2019. But if you were to ask a lot of really, really high talented engineers coming out of college in 2022, 2023, where do they want to work and what do they want to do? Crypto was not the most ideal spot to be, right? You ran the risk of getting a Wells notice from the SEC. You ran the risk of really being sanctioned by the government. It was not very popular. So a lot of really good talent was kind of blocked from entering the space. And what you had left was people who really wanted to speculate. So we saw these big rise in meme coins, things like that. And I think a lot of it was due to the fact that you blocked a lot of talent. So things like bringing domains on chain, we've worked with Suntory on tokenizing whiskey bottles on chain. We've worked with luxury car manufacturers, secondary salespeople who want to tokenize specific luxury cars. We've worked with now BlackRock for tokenizing money market funds on chain. These things were not very popular or sexy 2 years ago, and it's just because they weren't really allowed, right? People weren't allowed to build these things or weren't wanting to. Why would you associate your business with blockchain when it was being really heavily regulated? And so now we're kind of starting to see a lot of the early investments and focus we put into that vertical start to pay off. You're seeing a lot more adoption of real world assets, putting those assets on chain and being able to plug them into DeFi primitives that have now been built out over 3 or 4 years. So it's very exciting for us. DomainFi, I think, is another one of those things that maybe isn't the most sexy thing that for crypto natives. But if you poll a lot of people in your network, a lot of the things they do on a regular basis are not always like the most speculative or sexy, right? So we're excited about it. I'm excited to see a lot of it come to market and get built. And I'm going to hand it over to Billy because he's going to be the one doing a lot of the building for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think really to talk about what is domain tokenization, like why does it matter, especially for all of you who own a lot of top-level domains here today. And I think one of the biggest things that we are looking to build from day one is very simple on-ramp. So when people think about crypto, it's do I need to own crypto in order to transact within these systems? And the real answer is yes and no, as with most of these things. But for the purposes of the marketplace that we are looking to build on Avalanche, the answer is no. Like you would be able to transact with fiat just like you would. Maybe the settlement might be in crypto, but that's abstracted away and almost pretty much invisible. And in that way, it's really supposed to be a very trader-friendly environment. And I think one of the biggest things that crypto has introduced, which people kind of touch on, but not all the time, is the idea of capital efficiency, right? I have these real-world assets. The idea that a domain is a real-world asset is pretty funny to me because it's really just a registry on a database, right? Like at the end of the day, it is a virtual representation of an asset in and on itself. And the fact that it is a virtual representation makes it ripe for tokenization, right? And I think especially working with the D3 team very closely, we'd be able to bring that capital efficiency onto this new marketplace that we'd be building. Other things that I think are very interesting to note is that within this marketplace, yes, you can buy, trade, and sell domains. There's immediate efficiencies. You would not need to wait 2 months. I think I was talking to someone in the crowd. They waited 2 months for their domain to be transferred after somebody paid them $10,000 for it. That would never happen. It would settle instantly. I think things like that immediately kind of speaks to why you would want to tokenize a domain in the first place. But you also have new monetization opportunities, and I think people today touched on that over and over again. Things like lending, things like fractionalization, which are things that are already happening on other types of assets on chain today, right? So I think in 2021 there was this big thing around metaverse land, right? And all these things around, I think CryptoPunks was mentioned, around NFTs. There has been lending protocols that have been built for, I think, 5 to 6 years now that manages and have safeguarded billions of dollars of asset transactions within the smart contracts that we're effectively repurposing for the purpose of having domains be able to capitalize on the capital efficiency. And we're really excited about that because that means that if I own a domain today, I could lend it to someone tomorrow, but still own it, right? I could lend it to somebody and they could put ads on it, and then 1 year later, I'll have it back, right? And these are the types of things that you can't really do today because you would have to go through escrow, right? So I think having these types of mechanics that trustlessly govern using smart contracts that are tried and true and tested through the last 5 to 6 years will really enable us to unlock even more money and more revenue within the ecosystem. So we're particularly excited to build this, especially on Avalanche, because it's going to be really fast. Everything will settle instantly. And I think everything that we're talking about today is just going to keep pushing the meta forward.
Yeah, and it's good to mention that. I actually forgot to mention that. A staple of Avalanche's and what made it very popular in the market was its time to finality. So Avalanche has sub-second finality. So when things are, transacted and confirmed, they're confirmed. There's no reorgs, there's no takebacks, and it's extremely, fast. So if any of you have ever moved funds from a centralized exchange or to Ethereum, or moved funds from Ethereum back to a centralized exchange, you may notice that when you send your funds from Ethereum back to a centralized exchange, you have to wait for 14 block confirmations. I think 14 is still the number. It might be 13, but I think it's 14. So you can't actually do anything because it's not final yet. That's time to finality. So Avalanche has sub-second time to finality, which makes, obviously, transferring assets really nice because you don't have to wait, sometimes 15 minutes to make that transaction go through. So that is one of the advantages we have, and that's what I mentioned, that Avalanche's initial mission statement was to tokenize all the real assets. The chain was effectively built that way. It was built to try to finalize, tokenized bonds, which would be crazy to think that that's probably going to happen, but it probably will happen. So, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Billy, or if we want to open to questions.
Yeah, I mean, happy to open it to questions. I think one of the questions that I was asked, before coming on would be, how would we, for existing domains, how would we, effectively look to tokenize that? And I think one of the key things there is that D3 is going to be managing all of that infrastructure with registrars today and registries today. And where Avalanche and Insomnia will be really working on is building on top of that infrastructure to allow it to be very seamless from a user experience standpoint so that people don't need to understand crypto in order to trade it. The actual tokenization of itself is really just bringing that new model, right, of lending, of borrowing, of fractionalization, of instant settlement onto that. So, we're building on top of the good work that the D3 team has been building on top of already and making that available to everybody here. Please.
So how do you work with Plume that we just heard about? Or is there a bit of overlap there?
Plume would just be another layer one blockchain. You can think of them like cities. Like we're our own city, they're their own city. So how would we work with them? I guess if someone was taking funds to or from our chain to their chain, but it wouldn't be like we work directly together.
Another way we could potentially all work together is that once something is tokenized, you can move it from one chain onto another. So, let's say we tokenize it on Avalanche and somebody on Plume wants to interact with it, we could transfer it over for it to be traded on Plume.
So as a follow-up, how is D3 segmenting their service at the time of receiving your RFA to Plume RFA?
I couldn't hear the end of that.
Yeah, so I think D3 is managing the actual tokenization layer of the underlying domains itself. And I think that comes with a few things, which is, interfacing with the registries today, interfacing with the organization and the governing bodies that are dealing with the domains, and then making that available as a blockchain asset for people to interact with. So they might decide, hey, and I don't want to speak for the D3 team here, but they might decide, hey, these 20 million domains will go on this chain first, and then these other domains will go on these other chains, right? So it might be split up in one way, shape, or form, but I think that's going to be, part of the partnership between Avalanche and D3 is determining, what type of assets will be available on those blockchains.
Okay, I think I got this question. Like, how are they deciding which domains go where? Yeah, I think it could be from the users as well. So if you tokenize a domain with them and you're like, hey, I want it on Avalanche, or hey, I want it on Plume, it's up to the user. I'm assuming if that's how they're going to do the tokenization.
Hey. Hey, it's Michael from D3. That's accurate. It's up to the end user. They can choose what chain. Avalanche is one of the partners. Dom, Billy, thank you. We're very excited. Maybe as a leading question, can you help describe how fast you're seeing RWAs grow on Avalanche? What are some of the other projects that you work with, and what are some of the growth levers that you've used to incentivize a lot of these owners of off-chain assets to come on board to Avalanche or any other layer one blockchain and to accelerate that growth?
Yeah, so RWAs are growing very, very rapidly. And I don't think that's going to stop, and it's more than likely just going to exponentially increase as regulation becomes more clear. So where we saw it really initially was with the institutional side. So I head up enterprise and consumer. Morgan does institutional. But you can think of things like tokenized T-bills. So these became very, very popular in the bear market, mostly because yield on chain goes down. So most yield on chain generated in crypto is through lending. So people borrowing money to use leverage. Well, when asset prices are going down, leverage goes down, and your yield goes down. So there was a very long, prolonged period of time in the bear market where T-bills were out earning on-chain yield. And so people didn't want to take their money out of crypto. So if I have like, $5 million in stable coins on Avalanche, and I'm only getting 1% yield in Aave, but the government's giving me 5% guaranteed, why am I keeping my money in crypto? So that was really, I think, the first like big push we saw was when people started tokenizing T-bill yield. And then from there, it started to just expand into more. BlackRock started then issuing their Buildle, BUIDL program onto several chains. We also then started to see a lot of real-world assets become tokenized. So I mentioned Suntory, so we did a tokenized project with them for their wine. A company we work with called Luxury Rally Club, who works with a lot of the luxury car experiences, started tokenizing individual like high-end automobiles. Kind of an odd need use case. The guy works with a lot of people who are, have you ever seen those car shows at Pebble Beach? Well, most of those are owned by families. And when the family member, mostly the dad, dies at an old age, the kids really have no use for these things. And they're like, what do I do? How do I sell these things? What do I do with them? And so tokenizing them on chain helps. And it also opens up access to lending markets. So if there's people who maybe want to get liquidity for their entire car collection, you can now do that. I'm trying to think of what else we've done. We're also in the process of tokenizing points. So actual, like if you earn like Amex points, we did this with a company called Uptop. Uptop partnered with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and so they have a loyalty program. And so tokenizing those points on chain, allowing you to sell those points, gamble with them actually, which is ironic, gamble on games and use some of your points. And so we're starting to see like a lot more of these use cases in terms of businesses bringing things on chain. I don't think that's stopping. It's probably just going to continue. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that with RWA in general, it's about collateral, right? Like what is actually underpinning the asset itself, which I think came up quite a few times with, how does it actually work? A lot of what I do is on collateralizing things like music, right? So if I have digital streaming rights, I can collateralize that, knowing that, an artist might want to loan against their current assets against their future revenue, right? So creating a new market by tokenizing the actual music right itself. You could do the same thing with, let's say, YouTube payouts, right? So we're looking to work together with a really large YouTube agency that allows creators to take a loan out against their future earnings, right? So these things are all kind of what we wrap into the whole RWA bucket, but it's really about understanding what is the actual collateral, right, underneath, and how it's effectively backed and how that would affect the actual lending markets themselves.
Quick question over here. How do you guys think about identity on chain, and what's the vision for maybe a .avax TLD?
Yeah, so identity is a very big one for what I do on the consumer enterprise side. So on-chain identity right now on Avalanche exists through what we call Avi domains. So .avax, so I'm like Dominic.avax. But right now that's tied to a wallet. So a lot of it's like, hey, if I want to send funds to and from someone, instead of having to type in that really long stretch of numbers, which starts with OX because it's an EVM-based chain, and then like 20-something plus numbers after, I can just type in Dominic.avax. It associates that to my wallet and then lets me send funds. You could also do this inside of profiles on chain. So if you want to look up what I've collected for my NFTs, you can type in Dominic.avax into most marketplaces and it'll pull up my profile. And so that's more of like the crypto native side for identity. Where we're seeing a lot of demand right now is on the enterprise side for identity. So if you're a sports team, how do you identify what fans are actually like? Who are your fans? If you've had someone come to a game constantly for the last 3 years, 4 years, versus someone who's just coming in today? How do you identify those people? How do you change their experience right when they walk into the park? And so these are like, on-chain identities are really probably one of the biggest use cases for crypto that just hasn't been touched yet. But I've seen a lot of really smart people start to talk about it. I had a pretty lengthy conversation with someone at Point 72 Ventures, which is Steve Cohen's fund, and he owns the Mets. And it was this concept of, as you gain identity with the Mets, let's say there's 5 tiers. So I'm a tier 5 fan of the Mets, right? And I can put this on chain. You can actually then just let other people tap into that. And it just grows basically positive recognition for your brand. So if there's a pizza joint an hour away from Shea Stadium, or a minute away from Shea Stadium, you can really directly advertise to those people and say, hey, we're going to give you 15% off if you're a tier 5 fan and it's on chain. There's no need to actually walled garden that experience anymore. And for people, they're obviously going to want to go higher up, because the more I'm friends with the Mets, the more I'm friends with everyone else around the Mets. And so really, sports identity is a big one, but that's kind of, like I said, we tiered out into 2 buckets. And there's some amazing teams building great products there.
I think there's a delineation between like Web 2 identity and Web 3 identity. And Web 3 identity effectively today is the wallet, right? Your wallet is how you interact with the blockchain, how you make transactions with the blockchain. And I think there's a new thing called account abstraction that really came out recently, which allows you to essentially abstract away, from your wallet and allow your, identity to be managed by a smart contract. And so I think that's very interesting, because now you can secure your identity against, let's say, a passkey. You guys see like biometrics, right? That happens where, you need to do your Face ID, and you could associate your Face ID with a wallet address, right? And you would never need to store like very clunky seed phrases, and instead you can have, one singular way to manage your wallets against your identity in real life. And I think that makes it a lot easier to interact with the blockchain in the first place. Kind of back to the point about, Web3 has a user experience issue, right? It's how do you make this easier for consumers as a whole, with people who don't understand, any type of tech, any type of jargon that exists, and make it easier for them to be able to manage it. So I think there are things like this where, we're able to couple Face ID or, your email and directly issue you a wallet to make it seamless between your Web 2 and Web 3 transactions, and making it one identity, which I think is going to be the goal for our marketplace here.
Hello? Okay, it's my turn. Hi, Eric from cardomains.com. You mentioned a few times tokenizing cars, collector cars, luxury cars. A, do you have any actual experience, like people coming to you guys and doing that? I understand that it creates more liquidity and such, but probably the bigger question is it making it able to bring a higher value than, say, a traditional auction that takes a longer time, but we know the market, so to speak?
Yeah.
Is it bringing higher value?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these, this one's very unique because it's very niche, the person we work with, and it's much more of, you have to be like in a trusted environment. So it's not only that these cars are tokenized, there's actually a membership component to it too. I mean, you're dealing with, again, cars that are, there's that, I can't think of the name of it, but there's that really big car show at Pebble Beach. A lot of that's what you're dealing with. And so what I've learned recently is like cars like with watches, they actually just don't sell them to anyone. So yeah, like it's just because you can buy it doesn't mean you get it. So it's actually 2-pronged. It's like one, the membership, which is an NFT, is unique. So you have to get access that way. And then once you get access, then the cars are tokenized. So it allows for 2 things. One is very quick, like trusted sales. So I know if someone can buy from this, they have this NFT because they're in this group, and now it allows me to buy and sell. I don't have to worry about vetting buyers. I've already done that. And then the second thing is access to liquidity. So you might have a car collection, right, and you don't want to sell it, okay, but you want money for it. So how do you actually go and get loans for that? Most of it's through private banking, but then even then they kind of cap you. You can do that on chain. Now you have to be a little peculiar, because what if you default? The person who owns it then gets the collateral, and now you just sold a car to someone you didn't want to. So there are some protections in place, and we haven't rolled that out yet, but that's what they're going to be working on in the second half of this year is, okay, how do we start to give people now like access to liquidity on these sometimes $40, $50 million car collections? Yeah, I mean, there's transactions on chain where you can see the buying and selling. I can't pull them up right now for you, but yeah, there's transactions that have been done. I wouldn't necessarily say it's more. I would just say it's faster. It's a lot faster, right? Obviously, as you know, than having to go through that entire process. Yeah, and it's all trusted, I think, which is helpful, right? So you're not having to send the car to auction, get it appraised. That's already all done by the issuer. So yeah.
Also, Sotheby's has 30% fees. But we've been tokenizing art, like high value art, for this purpose. It's very interesting because one is you can have, let's say, a certifier create an NFT against an art piece that says, I validated the provenance of this piece of art, but that NFT doesn't actually denominate the ownership of the art as much as it's a certification. So there are things like that that adds value to the underlying piece itself that we've seen with tokenization, where it doesn't necessarily need to represent the thing all by itself as much as it represents a certification against the actual asset, which is also a value add depending on the type of transaction that you're looking for. So that's one thing I would add.
Questions? Raise your hand for the mic.
Okay, big risk asking this dumb question. I'm hearing often repeated, novice at this whole concept, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. I'd like to understand what that means.
Okay. So layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, that's really going to be just specific to the Ethereum ecosystem. I mentioned at the start, everyone's trying to figure out how you scale blockchains, right? And there's trade-offs with how you do that. I'm going to give you a very simple mental model to try to help you understand this. And this is not going to be perfect, so people who are more technical will probably be like, well, actually, it's okay, we're not going to do that. Let's view it like this. I'm standing here at a desk, okay, and there's a room behind me, let's say like 10 feet away, okay? And my job is to collect water bottles and bring those water bottles back to the room, okay? Now I can work on my speed and grab one and run really, really fast and just do one. Or I can maybe grab a bunch and bundle them on record and then bring one bunch to the back. Or maybe I can set up another stand, and now we can have 2 stands and we're both going. All 3 of those are approaches to scaling. So layer 2s are very similar to the bundle technique. So you punt parts of the scaling problem to someone else. They take the transactions, bundle them, and then bring them down. That's all it is. It's just an approach to scaling a blockchain to make it faster.
Great question.
This might be for the D3 folks. If there were a competitor, a competing protocol to Doma that would come out after Doma's already out and established, what's to prevent a domain name being tokenized in two different in 2 different places and therefore sold in 2 different places?
Inder, you want to take that? I could answer it too, but
no, I think we work with registries and registrars, and I think this is something like Bloom mentioned, you guys mentioned. It's like almost like you saying the bank will like issue the token in 2 different places for a USDC. They legally cannot do that. So you can burn the token from Doma and then reissue it on another protocol, but you have to take it out. You cannot, even on Doma, you cannot have 2 representations of the same domain. So for anyone who's participating in the protocol, you do have to give that guarantee that you're not going to do this rug pull for the user. So at any given point, only 1 token from our side on chain. And if anyone's giving you 2 tokens, they're going to do something shady. Like that's just not going to work.
I'm just going to ask a quick follow-up to that. So is there no chance of like spoofing any of these tokens or anything like that? I mean, the aspect of a unique identifier on, the DNS is something we face that type of spoofing problem all the time as well, but what's not to say we might face something similar on, a tokenized asset on your blockchain?
I think that's an Inder question as well. as they're doing the tokenization?
It's called crypto because it's cryptographic. So everything that's put on chain requires compute. You have to kind of prove it, what you've done. And it creates basically an uneditable record. So if you were to go change anything on chain, you'll actually have to redo all the stuff that's happened after that. So it's almost like codifying it. And I think, to be honest, again, I've never heard of the cryptographic protocol being broken. I don't know, Billy, if you've ever.
I get that, but I mean, anybody can start their own blockchain. Anybody can start their own Web3 field. I mean, I know there's several different layers to how all this wraps together, but I mean, to the consumer eye that is not technically specific, there's going to be numerous ways to spoof them, confuse them, and just create distrust and this type of ecosystem. There's a lot of ways to look at it, a lot of perspectives, but how do you ever do that just outside that crypto?
It kind of sounds like what you're asking is, they're going to be the ones that, if I correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are going to be the ones that actually hold these domains, and then you're going to issue NFTs to represent those domains. Can someone come along and just create a fake NFT and sell it to someone? Yes, they can do that. Just like someone can make a fake Louis Vuitton bag and sell it to someone, but it's not real. And so I guess the question is how do you prevent people from buying fake things? I mean, that's a little bit on the consumer to be educated in terms of where they're buying and what they're buying. Yeah, so they hold the domains. They issue an NFT that represents that domain. If someone else wants to just make a fake NFT that says they own that domain, well, I'm assuming I'd be able to go check with you guys and say, well, they own that domain, you don't. And I'd be able to verify that they're actually the holders of that, so then I'd be able to say your NFT is fake because you actually don't hold that domain. They do. And again, I guess if the consumer just instantly sees an NFT buy, it doesn't do any of that, then I mean, that's probably just some education that has to happen, but that's how I would check if I was a user.
The nice thing is, too, you can go verify on the blockchain directly. So they would publish their smart contract address, which is effectively a key, and you can tell whether or not they've issued the NFT from their key. And if it isn't, then you know it's fake automatically.
Any final questions?
Please.
Yeah, just your last comment. There could be multiple, could be competitors to D3. So just because there's a NFT in a wallet doesn't make it fake, because it has a different smart contract in it.
Right, but they can't double issue the same domain.
Right, but they could be, another domain could be used another alternative to D3.
That's correct. So if another competitor to D3 comes and they're registered, right? They're working with the registries, they're working with ICANN, and they have their own set of domains that they tokenize. Those are 100% legitimate, right? And those can be traded just like any other domains that D3 would issue as well.
Okay, another very basic one. Where does one read the, we have contracts. We read the contracts. Where does one read the terms of a smart contract? Yeah,
what's in a smart
where does
contract?
one set the terms of a smart contract?
So in crypto, we have these things called block explorers. I'm going the right way, right?
And auditors.
Yeah. And you can actually, there's explorers that let you do this. So I believe the one on Avalanche is called SnowScan. You can go directly to the transaction, look at it, see what moved from where, click open the actual smart contract and go into it if you're technical enough to do that. But there's, it's a blockchain-based explorer. Snowscared.com, you can see every transaction that's ever happened.
But if I want to create a smart contract, and I have the terms of that smart contract in my head, how do I put that?
You could do it two ways. One, you can pay Billy, and he could do it for you. Or if it's basic enough, there are some like no-code smart contracts. It's hopefully, I'm hopeful that that's something the combination of AI and crypto gets to where you can actually talk to some type of low-code agent that can do a basic level smart contract, whether that's for like me and you want to bet on the over-under for the Lakers game, right? But so yeah, those are kind of your two options. Either you're technical enough to write it, you pay someone like Billy, or hopefully someone can automate that for you.
In terms of reading what's in the contract itself, normally there are auditors, like independent third-party auditors that can translate that into human speak. And those you can trust because normally you're also working with 4 to 5 auditors, right? And they all need to reach the same conclusion of this is what exactly this smart contract does. For D3, it would be the issuance of domains as a token.
Dom, Billy, thank you so much.
Thank you.